The wife checked her husband's phone and found these names: the tender one, the amazing one, lady of my dreams. She got angry and called the first number to find out that was his mother. Then she called the second number, to which his sister replied. When she dialed the third number, her own phone rang. She cried until her eyes got swollen because she had doubted her innocent husband, so she gave him her whole month's salary to make up for it. Husband took the money and bought a gift for his girlfriend, whose name was saved as Uncle Mike the Mechanic. An old fellow walking down the road and sees a frog sitting in the grass. The frog says, "Hey there, if you kiss me, I will turn into a beautiful woman for ya." The old man picks up the frog and puts it in his shirt pocket and keeps on down the road. About a mile down the road, the frog looks up at him and says, "Aren't you going to kiss me?" The old man says, "No, I don't think so." The frog says, "Don't you want a beautiful woman?" The old man responds, "At my age, I would rather have a talking frog." He kept muttering something about trying to stick his arm through his car window that he thought was down. That was the public version. In private, he confessed that it happened when his wife brought some potted plants indoors after they had been out on the patio all day. A friendly garter snake had hidden in one of the pots and later slithered out across the floor, and the wife spotted it. "I was in the bathtub when I heard her scream," he related. "I thought she was being murdered, so I jumped out of the tub and ran to help her. I didn't even grab a towel. When I ran into the living room, she yelled that a snake was under the couch. I got down on all fours to look for it, and just then my dog came up from behind and cold-nosed me. I guess I thought it was the snake, and I fainted dead away. My wife thought I'd had a heart attack and called for an ambulance. I was still groggy when the medics arrived and lifted me onto a stretcher. Just as they were carrying me out, the snake came out from under the couch and obviously frightened one of the medics. He dropped his end of the stretcher, and that is when I broke my arm." Nasredine Hoja had a buffalo whose horns were set wide apart. Hoja often felt an urge to sit on the animal's head between the horns, but never dared try it. One day, the animal came and sat down very near him. Hoja threw caution to the winds, and seizing the horns, swung himself into the space between them. "Now I feel like a king on his throne," he said exultantly to his wife. The buffalo, startled by the sudden invasion of its privacy, got indignantly to its feet and jerked its head violently forward. Hoja went sailing into the air and fell head foremost into a ditch. "It doesn't matter," he said to his wife, who came running to help him. "It's not the first time a king has lost his throne." Recently, I was asked by a funeral director to play at a graveside service for a homeless man. He had no family or friends, so the service was to be at a pauper's cemetery in the back country. As I was not familiar with the backwoods, I got lost. I finally arrived an hour late and saw the funeral guy had evidently gone, and the hearse was nowhere in sight. There were only the diggers and crew left, and they were eating lunch. I felt badly and apologized to the men for being late. I went to the side of the grave and looked down, and the vault lid was already in place. I didn't know what else to do, so I started to play. The workers put down their lunches and began to gather around. I played out my heart and soul for this man with no family and friends. I played like I've never played before for this homeless man. And as I played Amazing Grace, the workers began to weep. They wept, I wept, we all wept together. When I finished, I packed up my guitar and started for my car. Though my head hung low, my heart was full. As I opened the door to my car, I heard one of the workers say, "I never seen nothing like that before, and I've been putting in septic tanks for 20 years. Apparently, I'm still lost." After 2 visits and exhaustive lab tests, he said I was doing fairly well for my age. A little concerned about that comment, I couldn't resist asking him, "Do you think I'll live to be 80? He asked, "Do you smoke tobacco, or drink beer, wine, or hard liquor?" "Oh no," I replied. "I'm not doing drugs either." Then he asked, "Do you eat ribeye steaks and barbecued ribs?" I said, "Not much. My former doctor said that all red meat is very unhealthy." "Do you spend a lot of time in the sun, like playing golf, boating, sailing, hiking, or bicycling?" "No, I don't," I said. He asked, "Do you gamble, drive motorcycles, drive fast cars, or have a lot of "No," I said. He looked at me and said, "Then why do you even give a Two math professors are in a restaurant. One argues that the average person does not know any math beyond high school. The other argues that the average person knows some more advanced math. Just then, the first one gets up to use the restroom. The second professor calls over his waitress and says, "When you bring our food, I'm going to ask you a mathematical question. I want you to answer 1/3 x cubed. Can you do that?" The waitress says, "I don't know if I can remember that. 1/3 x cubed, says the prof. 1/3 x cubed, asks the waitress. 1 third x cubed 1/3 x cubed 1/3 x cubed. The waitress leaves and the other professor comes back. They resume their conversation until a few minutes later when the waitress brings their food. The professor says to the waitress, "Say, do you mind if I ask you something?" "Not at all." "Can you tell me what the integral of x squared x is?" The waitress pauses, then says, 1/3 x cubed. As she walks away, she stops, turns, and adds, plus a constant. One day, a poor boy who was selling goods from door to door to pay his way through school found he had only 1 thin dime left, and he was hungry. He decided he would ask for a meal at the next house. However, he lost his nerve when a lovely young woman opened the door. Instead of a meal, he asked for a drink of water. She thought he looked hungry, so brought him a large glass of milk. He drank it so slowly and then asked, "How much do I owe you?" "You don't owe me anything," she replied. "Mother has taught us never to accept pay for a kindness." He said, "Then I thank you from my heart." As Howard Kelly left that house, he not only felt stronger physically, but his faith in God and man was strong also. He had been ready to give up and quit. Many years later, that same young woman became critically ill. The local doctors were baffled. They finally sent her to the big city, where they called in specialists to study her rare disease. Dr. Howard Kelly was called in for the consultation. When he heard the name of the town she came from, a strange light filled his eyes. Immediately, he rose and went down the hall of the hospital to her room. Dressed in his doctor's gown, he went in to see her. He recognized her at once. He went back to the consultation room, determined to do his best to save her life. From that day on, he gave special attention to her case. After a long struggle, the battle was won. Kelly requested the business office to pass the final bill to him for approval. He looked at it, then wrote something on the edge, and the bill was sent to her room. She feared to open it, for she was sure it would take the rest of her life to pay for it all. Finally, she looked, and something caught her attention on the side of the bill. She read these words: "Paid in full with 1 glass of milk." Signed, Dr. Howard Kelly. Tears of joy flooded her eyes as her happy heart prayed. Thank you, God, that your love has spread broad through human hearts and hands. A teenage boy keeps depositing $1 million in his bank account every day. One day, Mrs. Mary, the bank manager, asks him to provide the source of all the money he's depositing. "I win it through gambling," he answers. Nobody can win that much money so consistently through gambling. Wanna proof? How about we bet on 1,000 $1,000 that I'll kiss my eye right here? What? That's impossible. Okay, I accept. So the boy removes his fake eye, kisses it, and returns it. Hand me my $1,000. Please. Mrs. Mary got angry and decided to gamble again, so the next day she demanded a rematch. Okay, do you bet on $3,000 that I'll lick my ear? She thoroughly examined his ears, and after getting sure they're real, she accepted. So the boy removed his fake tongue and licked his ear. The next day, Mrs. Mary asked for a rematch, but no cheap tricks this time. Okay, I bet $5,000 that you have pierced nip. Ha, no, yelled Mrs. Mary as she removed her top. Fair enough, here's your $5,000. Now allow me to collect my money. And she was confused as all the employees at the bank were paying the boy. What have you done this time? She said. Oh, I bet each one of them $10,000 that I'll make you flap me your tit. Two men leave a store. One man walks to his Corvette, the other walks out to his moped. The guy with the moped admires the Corvette, and the owner lets him take a look at it. He gets on his moped. The other guy gets into his Veta, and they both leave the parking lot. The guy in the Corvette decides to show off and race out of the parking lot. He stops at a stoplight. Enjoying his music, he looks out the window and sees the guy on the moped flying by at about 80 km/h. He can't believe a moped can go that fast, so he races up to the guy on the moped and passes him again to show how fast he can go. At the next stoplight, the guy on the moped speeds by once more. Finally, the Corvette and moped stop at the same stoplight. How the hell did you go past me so fast like that? The guy in the Corvette asks. The guy on the moped, all flushed and pale, looks at the man and says, My suspenders are caught on your car door. A couple whose marriage was on the rocks sought the advice of their pastor. The pastor encouraged them to patch up their quarrel and keep their vows, but the couple was adamant. "Well," said the pastor, "you know the consequences if you insist on a divorce. Remember this, you must divide your property equally." The wife flared up. "You mean the $4,000 I have saved up? I must give him half. My money." "Yes," said the pastor, "he gets $2,000. You get $2,000. "What about my furniture? I paid for that." "Same thing," answered the pastor. "You split it equally." There was a challenging gleam in the wife's eye. "What about our 3 children?" The pastor was stumped at first, but then quickly came up with a Solomonic solution. "Go back and live together until your 4th child is born. Then you take 2 children, and your husband takes 2. The wife shook her head. "No, I'm sure that wouldn't work out. If I depended on him, I wouldn't have the 3 I've got." Two cowboys come upon an Indian lying on his stomach with his ear to the ground. One of the cowboys stops and says to the other, "You see that Indian?" "Yeah," says the other cowboy. "Look," says the first one, "he's listening to the ground. He can hear things for miles in any direction." Just then the Indian looks up. "Covered wagon," he says, "about 2 miles away. Have 2 horses, 1 brown, 1 white. Man, woman, child. Household effects in wagon." "Incredible," says the cowboy to his friend. "This Indian knows how far away they are, how many horses, what color they are, who is in the wagon, and what is in the wagon. Amazing." The Indian looks up and says, "Ran over me about a half hour ago." 12. Husband hangs up his wife's call. "Wife, I am very busy at the moment. I will call myself when I finish." His neighbor got a call saying, "You are not busy." S. Man. "No, no, you order." "Yes, your wife wants to talk to you." Wife. "We'll come home early in the evening and I will definitely bring iodox." A man stopped at a flower shop to order some flowers to be wired to his mother who lived 200 miles away. As he got out of his car, he noticed a young girl sitting on the curb sobbing. He asked her what was wrong, and she replied, "I wanted to buy a red rose for my mother, but I only have 75 cents, and a rose costs $2. The man smiled and said, "Come on in with me. I'll buy you a rose." He bought the little girl her rose and ordered his own mother's flowers. As they were leaving, he offered the girl a ride home. She said, "Yes, please. You can take me to my mother." She directed him to a cemetery, where she placed the rose on a freshly dug grave. The man returned to the flower shop, cancelled the wire order, picked up a bouquet, and drove the 200 miles to his mother's house. Your presence makes the heart of your mother rejoice. A man is sitting on a train with a baby who is very ugly. In fact, the baby is so ugly that a nearby passenger says, "What a hideous baby!" "I've never been so insulted in my whole life," the man says, and hurries to the train conductor to complain. I'm so sorry, sir, the train conductor says when the man tells her. He was insulted so terribly. I apologize on behalf of the railway. Company! Please allow me to move you to the first-class cabin where you can enjoy a free glass of champagne, and I will try to find some cheese for your pet rat. Henry Kissinger was once asked to explain what shuttle diplomacy was. Oh, it is a never-failing old Jewish method. Let me give you an example. Suppose you want to marry Rockefeller's daughter to a lad from a Siberian village. How would you do that? Easy. I go to a Siberian village, find there a young man and ask him, "Would you like to marry an American?" He says, "Why? We've got awesome girls here." "Well, but she is the daughter of a billionaire." He goes, "Oh, this changes things." Then I go to Switzerland, walk into a large bank's board meeting and ask, "How would you like to have a simple Siberian man to be your bank's president?" "Oh no." "What if I told you he was Rockefeller's son-in-law?" "Oh, this changes things." So then I go see Rockefeller and ask, "Would you like your daughter to marry a Russian peasant?" "What do you mean? Everyone in my family is in banking." "Funny you should mention that. He is actually a Swiss bank president." "Oh, this changes things." "Susie, come here, my child. Mr. Kissinger found you. A good husband. He is the president of a large Swiss bank." "Bah! All big bankers are punies or get." And I say, "Well, this one is a strong Siberian hunk." "Oh, this changes things." A police officer catches Dave duck hunting and checks to make sure he has the right license. So Dave went hunting in the woods one day and bam, shot a duck. A bored, nearby trooper waiting in his patrol car near the highway hears the gunshot, gets out and runs into the woods to find Dave holding the duck. The trooper yells, pointing at Dave, "You stop right there! Let me see that duck!" Dave gives the duck over to the trooper, who proceeds to stick his finger in the duck's ass, pull it out and sniff it. "You know, this is a California duck. You need to have a California license to hunt this duck." Dave pulls out a California license and hands it to the trooper, who inspects it closely. Surprised, the trooper says, "Well, it looks like this is your lucky day, Dave. But I've got my eye on you." The trooper leaves, almost making it back to his car, when bam! He hears another gunshot. "I've got that fuck now," the trooper said to himself, and ran back out to find Dave, yet again holding up a duck. "Stop right there, Dave. Gimme that." He yanks the duck away from Dave, jams his finger deep into the duck's anus, pulls out his finger, and gives it a big ol' whiff. He points at Dave with his stinky finger. "This is a Canadian duck. You better have a Canadian license." Confidently, Dave pulls out a license and hands it to the trooper. The trooper looks at it, and lo and behold, it's a Canadian license. "Well, Dave, it looks like you've skirted by again, but you can't escape the law forever." The trooper grumbles and starts making his way back to his car, when bam! He hears yet another gunshot right behind him. He turns around and runs over to Dave, who is, of course, holding another duck. The trooper doesn't say a word, and storms over to Dave, who calmly hands him the duck as the trooper grabs it, frustratingly. The trooper slides his finger into the limp duck's balloon knot and feels around. He slowly pulls his finger out, waving it around, and takes in its scent as if he's sampling some new, high-class perfume. He stops and looks at Dave, wearing an impish grin. "Now, Dave, this is a..." He sniffs the air again. "This is an almost extinct Trans-Siberian duck. If you don't have a Trans-Siberian Class A duck hunting license, I'm going to put you away for a long, long time." Dave stops for a moment, pulls out a license, and hands it to the trooper. The trooper looks down. Sure enough, it's a Trans-Siberian Class A duck hunting license. The trooper collapses to his knees, the license crumpling out of his hands. The trooper is almost speechless and has a bewildered, twisted look on his face. Silence. The wind blows a leaf by, and it is just the two of them, the violated duck by the trooper's side. "But how? Who are you? What are you?" Slowly, Dave turns around and bends down, as if reaching for something. But he just turns his head back towards the trooper and finally says, "I don't know, officer. You tell me." A man gets pulled over with his young son in the back seat. The cop comes to the window. "Sorry, officer, I was rushing to get home. My wife is throwing a dinner party for very important guests." The cop writes him a ticket anyway, wishes him a good day, and walks back to his patrol car. As he walks away, the dad mutters, "Bat." The little boy, who has been quiet, asks, "Daddy, what?" The dad points at the cop. When they get home, they park the car and are walking up the driveway when the dad steps in a pile of dog poop. "Shh!" he exclaims. The little boy asks, "Daddy, what?" Dad points to his shoe. Sometime later, the boy goes upstairs to the bathroom to see his dad shaven. He accidentally cuts himself and yells, "Nuts!" "Daddy? What nuts?" Dad points to his face. Boy finally goes into the kitchen to see his mother stuffing a turkey. She drops some of the stuffing on the floor and yells, "F***." "Mommy? What?" She points at the dropped stuffing. Sometime later, there is a knock on the door. It's a cop who is investigating a rash of local crime, interviewing the neighbors. The little boy answers the door and gleefully says, "Howdy, boss." "Wipe your shit on the mat." Dad is upstairs shaving his. Mum's in the kitchen, a turkey. Having had seriously bad breath for most of his adult life, Larry finally goes to see a doctor about it. The doctor examines Larry, takes samples of his saliva, tooth plaque, and does a tongue swab. He asks Larry to return Tuesday for the test results. Tuesday, Larry is sitting in the doctor's office, hopeful for a cure. "Larry," says the doc, "your breath could knock a buzzard off a wagon at 50 paces. And yet none of the tests or my examination can indicate why. Is there nothing I can do? Zrenia, prosit Larry." "Well, sir," the doc replies, "there is one thing you can try, but it's very unorthodox." "Go on," Swing says Larry. "What you can do is 3 times a day. Stick your toothbrush up your backside and then brush your teeth with it." "That sounds pretty nasty," says Larry, "but will it cure my bad breath?" "No," says the doctor, "but it should tone it down a bit." A guy is imprisoned for his first time. On his first night, a few minutes after lights out, his cellmate moves closer to the cell bars. A while later, someone from another cell shouts, Number 13. His cellmate and the entire block bursts into laughter. The new prisoner finds this strange. Shortly after they were done laughing, another inmate shouts, 33! And the entire block of inmates again started laughing. 27! Shouted another inmate. More laughter followed. The new prisoner is now completely puzzled. What's going on? Why is everyone laughing at numbers? He asks the cellmate. Oh, replied the cellmate, still giggling. Thing is, we've been in here for so long. We told the same jokes until we eventually knew them all. So we decided to give them numbers so that instead of saying the entire joke, you just say the number and we know which one it is. Astonished, the new prisoner decides to see if that's true. He goes over to the cell bars and shouts, Number 72. All the inmates explode into a massive laughter, and the entire block is roaring, to a point where his cellmate is now on the floor, rolling with laughter. The new prisoner is now dumbstruck and completely lost. Which one is number 72? He asks the cellmate. In between laughs, while trying to catch his breath, his cellmate replies, We've never heard that one before.